Welcome to the Connected Leaders Academy virtual conference designed to reshape your vision of transformation. As we navigate the evolving business landscape, our speakers will unveil innovative strategies to manage and initiate change. Prepare to adapt, innovate, and lead, ensuring your role in this transformative era.
So, 2013, April 2013. I am 27, good age, and I'm sitting in the bankruptcy courts of Greenbelt, Maryland, declaring bankruptcy at age 27. How in the world did I get here? I always thought for some reason at that time that, hey, you know what? Bankruptcy is something that older people in the 40s, 50s, and 60s declare. It happens to them. But here I am at 27 going like, how did I get here? But little did I know that is one of the life events that, has put me on this journey to what I'm going to discuss today on credit, consciousness, and creating abundance, and how this is all connected. Okay. So I'm going to start with credit. I will come full circle with all of this. Now, credit is something that is not taught at all, along with financial literacy in our country, in the United States at the very least. And it's something that now, with what's happening with the student loan crisis and everything going on, there's a desire and a hunger for financial literacy and also for credit. Okay. Now, if you're like me, you were probably told growing up that credit cards are evil, don't use them, chop them up, all that stuff, and that you shouldn't get into credit card debt. The problem with that advice is that already starts you off on a bad track to not only not understanding credit, but also not having a great relationship with credit, okay? And also, you do need to use credit cards. I'll get into that in this talk, today. But let's go back a bit. When people think of credit, there's two things that they think about. One, people think, and I thought this too, that credit is something that is relatively new. And by relatively new, we think it's been here since about maybe the 80s, 60s, 70s, maybe as old as 100 to 150 years. Here's the truth. Credit is nothing new. It's much, much older than you think. Credit is actually over 5,000 years old. That's right, over 5,000 years old. The Romans used credit. Some of the early civilizations, such as Sumer, used credit. They would give loans on grain that were, I believe, at 30% interest, loans on silver at 10% interest. The Europeans, when they began to, primarily English, when they began to, have a go out and explore new lands and need trade, they needed capital, and they didn't want restrictions, so they needed credit to go out and do that. And so, fun fact here as well. I believe it was in the year sometime in the 1800s. In England, they put out a newspaper called the Manchester Card Society, and you'll find this funny. In that paper, they would publish all the accounts of people who failed to pay their debts. So if I were to come to you back then and say, "Hey, so and so, can I borrow $100,000 or whatnot?" You could look me up in the paper to see if I paid anyone back and go, "Nope." Now, make that comparison to today, where credit is very personal. No one talks about it. And the only way someone's going to see it is if you're going to get it repaired or you authorize someone to do a hard point credit. It's very, very, very personal. Number two, when people think of credit, is this: they think of their score and then the accounts that they have. The problem with that is that's only about 1/4 of your credit report in its entirety. Okay. So your actual credit report, not the score, the credit report has multiple tiers. It actually has 4 tiers. The first tier is personal information. That will contain your name, any variations of your name, your birth date, phone number, your current address, old addresses, and any employers that you have worked at in the past. Second tier is your hard inquiries. Okay. Third tier is your accounts. The fourth tier is this public record, which holds bankruptcies and judgments. All right. That's how your credit report is broken down. And again, when your credit report is pooled, this is what is seen by someone. They're seeing all 4 tiers. And if you have any information on there that is erroneous, false, or just incorrect, that will have an impact on what you can get approved for. Another thing people don't realize is that when it comes to your credit, especially in the personal information section, that is actually the most important section that you want to make sure is the most up to date. Here's why. One, if you're having to dispute anything on your credit report, whether if it's a collection account, late payment, hard inquiry, charge off, okay, anything in the personal information section that's old, outdated, erroneous, or attached to those negative items in your file. So what happens is when you dispute a collection account, for example, the bureau is lazy because they get millions of dispute note every year. They will look in the personal information section, okay, and they will look to see what name and address is attached to that account. They'll come back and say, "Hey, it was you, was verified." Here's the problem with that. Number one, how do they know it was you beyond a shadow of a doubt? They don't. Number two, I've had clients, and myself included, I've had my name misspelled in a way I've never spelled it. I've had variations of my name. I've had clients have had old addresses on, and in the prior addresses, they've had addresses on there that they never lived at. They've had addresses on there in the current address section that they've never been to. I had one client, I kid you not, where the bureaus had him listed as, for his name, they had him listed as a state highway. Not a joke. This happens. So we don't check this thing called your credit report that's always in the background. Someone pulls it, they're seeing all this information on you, and they're gonna look at you and judge you and go, "Well, that's interesting. You want to borrow how much money, and this is who you say you are." It's not something you want to do. So that is your credit report, but also with your personal information. I can tell you this as well. When you actually update your personal information, and you need to call into the credit bureaus to do this, and say, look, the way you want your personal information set up is to have it where you have one name, no other variations of your name, okay, one phone number, one social, because some people have more than one social, one current address that is correct across all three credit bureaus. And by the way, the credit bureaus are all privately owned, and they operate independently of each other. So just because you correct information in one bureau does not mean it will be correct in another. And it's also why if you look at all three of your credit reports from Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, okay, you will see they all have different information on you. So you want to make sure it looks clean. One current address that's the same across all three bureaus. No old addresses. One current employer. That's it. All right. And when you do this, this can actually help boost your credit scores anywhere between 20 to 70 points by itself. Here's the kicker. When you do this, the bureaus know that you're trying to do this. So most likely they'll try to give you a hard time correcting this information. So that happens if you call Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian, they give you a hard time. If the rep on the phone's giving you a hard time, hang up the phone and call back another day, 5 minutes later, because I've done this myself. One person will give you a hard time and tell you, hey, you have to mail in all his identity documents. You don't. Then you call back the next day or 10 minutes later, the next person say, "Oh yeah, I'll remove all this, done." It's happened to me, it's happened to my client, it's a real thing. Last thing I'll say about this part, they are supposed to give you a confirmation number. Keep that, because that is your receipt of them saying, "Hey, we will update this information." Because what happens is if you do not do that, if you don't get a confirmation number, they may not remove any of the information, or they may only remove parts of it. And you won't know until you check that section. So keep the confirmation number handy. This way, if they don't remove it, you have a receipt. You can say, "Hey, you're supposed to change it," because if they don't, that's a violation, and they can get a lot of trouble for that. Here's the other part with credit. People don't understand how your credit score grows. Again, when people think of credit, they think of their score and the accounts. And again, that's only about 1/4. But how does your score grow, right? So your score grows based on these 5 factors. 35% is payment history. So paying your bills on time, everyone knows this. 30% is credit utilization. That looks at all of the available credit you have, and that looks at it on all the credit cards you have individually and overall, and asks, okay, are you using less than 30% of the credit limit? Ideally, you want to use 10 to 20%, okay? The less you use, the better. 15% is length of credit history. That looks at all the open accounts that you have and gives you an average age. And again, remember this, that's open accounts, not closed, open accounts. The older the average age and what points you get, you cannot rush this. That's built up over time and years. The next chunk is mixed credit. So that's looking at, okay, do you have any installment accounts, meaning car note, student loan? Do you have revolving credit, credit cards, line of credit? If you don't have a mortgage, do you at least have your rent being reported on your credit report, which you want to do? It helps make you look way good, way better when you're going to apply for a mortgage. You also have your utility payments being reported on your credit report, cell phone payments. You can also get your streaming services. So now, if you need to build credit, you do not need to have to go apply for a secure credit card. You can get those other credit builders reported on your credit report, and there's tons of credit builders. I don't have time to go into today, but there's a lot out there. That's 10% of your score. The last chunk is new accounts. That looks at any new accounts that you've opened, and also hard inquiries. And by the way, hard inquiries are very, very important. They do matter. I've talked to many lenders, bankers. When you have a long list of where you've been, where you applied, they look at that. They look at those lists of hard inquiries, and they'll say, "Oh, you went to my competitor. Why are you coming to me?" Or if you did get approved, why are you coming to me? And some places will even hold certain hard inquiries as a red flag against you. For example, if you apply for a payday loan, they'll go, "Whoa, red flag, you're desperate. I don't want to work with you." Okay. So that new accounts is 10%. That's how your score grows. Notice how it did not say anything about paying collections, charge-offs, or repossessions, things like that. Why? Well, if that was a part of your component, the 5 components of your credit score, it would count, but they don't, because those are debts that you defaulted on. Because the way it looks to a creditor is they go, so you, and the way the algorithm works is that, why would it reward you on debts that you defaulted on, whatever the story may be? Because another company's gonna look at that and go, so you waited all this time to pay on this collection account charge off when you had all this time to try to work something out, then you default on it, then you paid it, which means if I'm going to give you this money or whatever it is that you're applying for, that could happen to me. It'll cost me money as a loss, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to approve you. Or if I do, I am legally allowed to charge you a higher interest rate because you demonstrated that you are a high risk, and also your credit report, believe it or not, is also a measurement of your financial character. So they're going to look at that and say, I can charge you a higher rate because legally you've not demonstrated you pay people back on time, and it also shows that you don't care. When it comes to your credit, it's about looking good on paper, because no one's going to ask you, hey, what happened? What's going on? And I've had an experience where when you are applying for something, for example, like your credit can deny you job opportunities, not a joke. Okay. And I've had the humbling experience of having to explain to an employer, hey, this is why my credit is terrible because of X, Y, and Z. When at the end of the day, you're just trying to do good in the world and improve your life financially, but they want to know why your credit is not where it should be. Right. So I can go on and on and on. I do classes on credit, but there's more to this I have to continue. So next question is, with all the information that's out there about building credit, paying down debt, being financially responsible, everything else, why to this day still is growing or building a healthy credit score and maintaining credit still so difficult? Yes, the economy right now is not the greatest. That's one factor. But again, even with all the information and all the opportunity out there, what's going on? Why is it still such a challenge? Well, this leads into the abundance side of things, the consciousness side of things, right? So, leading into abundance, because when people think of abundance, particularly here in America and really in first world countries, when you think of abundance, what comes to mind? You think about more money. The question I have for you is, why are you limiting abundance to just money? Think about that. And I've been there before too, because when you see creating more abundance, experience more abundance, you're like, ooh, money, because it's a big deal. It's an important factor in our lives. However, when you want to create more abundance or experience more abundance, or actually, I should say, create more abundance, there's a trap you put yourself in. Okay. The truth about abundance is that you cannot create more of it. Abundance just is. It's something that is a part of our life, but we don't see it as that. Why? Because again, when we think of abundance, we think of money. If you're not having the money and business you want, you think that you believe that there's a lack of abundance in your life. Not true. Here's something I ask you. When was the last time you started breathing? You thought, oh man, I better only take 3,000 breaths today because there's only so much air on the planet. You didn't. Number two, when was the last time you're like, you know what? I better not take a shower for next week because there's only so much water on this planet. You didn't do that. Number three, when was the last time you sat there and said, you know what? I better not eat for a week. Now, unless you're fasting, that's different. But if you're not fasting, did you ever go, you know what? I shouldn't eat all this food today. I should wait a week because there's only so much food around me. You did not. What's my point here? we already are living in a age era of abundance. We can, if you're living in a first world country, you can get food 24/7 throughout the whole year. You couldn't do that 200, 300 years ago. You can get water anytime from the sink faucet at the store. There's an abundance of air. And when it comes to money, what we're not seeing is there is an abundance of opportunity to improve your business, make more money, make new choices. Abundance just is. And here's the other side to abundance that people don't think about. If there's an abundance of things that we do want, you ever notice too and realize that you have an abundance of things that you don't want? So how come abundance is only limited to what we want and not things we don't want? So the question becomes, how do you experience, not create, how do you experience more of the abundance that you do want? Well, take your focus of the abundance of things that you don't want, their problems and everything else, and start to move it over to change your focus to what you do prefer, what you do want. And this begs another question. If you're not experiencing the abundance you want of anything, the question you could ask yourself is go deeper. What are your memories? What are your earliest memories of money? What do you remember growing up in your childhood around money? Around how was your childhood growing up and into your own experience as a teenager and everything else, right? Let's go deeper. What are your beliefs about yourself? How do you truly perceive yourself? I ask this because those are all factors running around in the back of your mind, in your unconscious mind, that are running. They've been programmed into you, or maybe as a child, you saw your parents fighting about money, fighting about love, whatever it is, all these things, and you unconsciously at that time made a belief about, okay, well, money must be evil, or depending on there's so many variations, but depending on your childhood and how you grew up and how you believe about yourself. Like for me, for example, I had the hardest time with the belief of I'm not good enough. So if I'm not good enough because I have to achieve these high expectations. If I don't, I'm not good enough. So how do you think that affected my relationship with money? The problem is that when you have beliefs about money that do not serve you, and you also really don't believe unconsciously that you are good enough, you will make enough money to survive, but you will never make the amount of money that you want. And if you do make the amount of money that you do want without addressing your beliefs about money and how you perceive yourself, this great thing called self-sabotage kicks in like magic on point, and you will lose it all. And it happens. And you've probably read stories about people who had great success with everything and then you know, lost it all multiple times and they couldn't figure out why. Well, it comes down to these memories and how you perceive it by yourself, but also to another part, you go much deeper. And so the consciousness part comes in. Because now we'll become consciously aware of what's going on in the unconscious mind. See, when you're born, when you're first born, actually no, before you're born, your unconscious mind, and that's a part of you that helps you breathe. You're not thinking about it, keeps you alive, your heart beating, all this stuff. It's running things automatically, right? That starts sometime in the womb. Then you're born. And so when you're first born, by the way, you're not a blank slate. You do inherit not just your parents' good looks, but also you inherit their beliefs, your grandparents' beliefs, your ancestors' beliefs. You also inherit the things that they also didn't resolve. Inherited trauma, emotions, all these things. So you do come into the world with some blueprint. But after that, you also have a personality. From 0 to about age 5 or 6, you're interacting with the world unconsciously. And so you can't do much. You depend on your parents. You're just, acting out emotionally, right? So until about 5 or 6, your conscious mind kicks in. This is why if you ask yourself and other people, tell me some memories that you had about yourself prior to age 5, and most people can't think of anything because you are interacting with the world unconsciously. So from 0 to 5, on top of this too, you also created an unconscious identity. In that time frame, in addition to all the other beliefs and things that you inherited from your parents, grandparents, and your ancestors, you were interacting with the world. You were taking everything your parents were saying as the word of God. You were determining what's safe, what's not safe, what you can't have, what you're allowed to have. On top of this, all trying to survive because your conscious mind isn't there. Your unconscious mind's goal is to keep you safe. That's its goal all the time, no matter what, right? So you have this identity, and also depending on how your upbringing was, you will also going to recreate more of that unconsciously. So if your upbringing was not the greatest, you will unconsciously recreate more of that for the rest of your life. If your upbringing was amazing, you will unconsciously recreate more of that. So then your conscious mind kicks in about 5, 6, or 7. Even then, even through up into your 20s, you're still making decisions and beliefs about yourself and the world. The thing is, the conflict comes in where you're like, hey, I want more money. I want better love. I want to be healthier. I want better credit. That's what you want consciously. But unconsciously, you have this identity that you have this identity and beliefs that say more money is bad, we're not good enough, we don't deserve much. And whatever else you had growing up, right? It varies to everybody. So then you're in this battle of trying to go for what you want, but unconsciously, not unconsciously, you don't really want it, right? So what's the key to it? How do we change this so we can experience the abundance we want and have the credit we want? Well, it comes down to shifting your unconscious identity. How in the world do you do that? Well, one, you can't just talk to your unconscious mind because it's not communicate with words. Your unconscious mind likes to communicate, likes to communicate with emotion, beliefs, behavior. So one of the best things you can do to start to shift this, and this is where we're going to come full circle, is to one of the things you can do is to visualize what is that you want. And I also offer going over these 4 core choices. One, I choose the end result of being the predominant creator of my life. I choose the end result of living a life of health and vitality. I choose the end result of living a life that I love. I choose the end result of living my true nature and purpose. So take those 4 choices, write them down, get specific, and be in the end result, or as I should say, the emotional end result. And let's do an easy one. I choose the end result of living a life of health and vitality. Okay. See yourself looking great, running, jumping, and getting to the emotion of it. How are you feeling? What are you touching, tasting, sensing? Do that for all 4, because what you're going to do is this. When you do that for all 4, your unconscious mind is going to go, wait a minute, this is different. I like this. I like this. Then if you do this consistently, there's the word consistently, you then over time will then be able to create the life you want unconsciously, because you have to deal with the unconscious mind because it runs like 95% of our decisions and things that we do. And we don't like that. We like to think I'm constantly in control all the time. You're not. Okay. That's one way. The other way is to simply be present with the emotions that come up. So we all have one skill we've mastered, which is just not dealing with the emotions that we have growing up. So the anger, the trauma, the fear, you want to be present with it. You want to be present with that emotion. Do some diaphragmatic breathing, be present with it, and just breathe and feel it out. And trust me, you do that, it will dissipate. And as you do that, you release frozen energy, frozen emotions. You also begin to shift the unconscious identity. And then from there, as you start doing that, it'll be easier, I dare say, to shift your focus from what you don't want to experience more of the abundance things that you do want, to focus on having more money, more success, more prosperity, better health. Then as you do that, more money comes in. More money comes in to then help to build up your credit, because it's kind of hard to build a credit score with inconsistent income. That's how this game works. So now we are consciously aware of what's going on, how to bring it up to your unconscious mind, be consciously aware of it, tackle it, okay, and have not just great credit, but more importantly, live a life that we love, life that we want, and go from there. And with that, I hope this is something that has impacted you in some way. If I ever helped one person, I want you to know that you're way more powerful than you believe what you think. You can do, be, and have anything that you want. Just address the unconscious mind, focus on the abundance you want. And from there, my friend, you can have the great credit and life you want and achieve anything else you want. That, my friend, is credit, consciousness, and I won't say creating abundance, but experiencing abundance that you want. Boom.
Thank you for participating in today's enlightening session. As we transition to our next expert, remember that each strategy and insight is a step toward becoming a transformative leader in your field. Visit connectedleadersacademy.com to stay engaged and informed. The journey of change is ongoing. Let's move forward together.